Welcome to Dark Tales. Today, we're diving into the chilling story of a small town gripped by fear after a brutal crime. This is the story of Greendale, a place where everyone knew each other, but no one knew the dark secrets lurking behind closed doors. Join us as we unravel the mystery of a heinous crime that shattered the peace of this quiet town. Chapter 1: The Town of Greendale. Greendale was the kind of place people dreamed of living in. It was nestled in the foothills of a lush, green valley, surrounded by forests and meadows that seemed to stretch on forever. The town was small, with only about 3,000 residents, and everyone knew each other. It was the sort of community where neighbors waved hello, kids rode their bikes without fear, and doors were often left unlocked. But as with any small town, Greendale had its secrets. Beneath the smiles and friendly waves, there were whispers. Whispers of grudges that never died, of feuds that ran generations deep, and of lives that were not as perfect as they seemed. Despite its picturesque appearance, Greendale was a town with shadows lurking just out of sight. One family in particular had always seemed a little different: the Millers. James and Lily Miller were quiet, reserved, and kept to themselves. They had moved to Greendale a few years ago, seeking peace after a series of unfortunate events in the city. James was a retired lawyer, and Lily ran a small antique shop on Main Street. They were polite, but never quite fit into the fabric of the town. Their daughter, Lucy, was a bright and curious teenager with a passion for photography. She often wandered the town and its outskirts, capturing the beauty of the landscape with her camera. Lucy was well-liked, but, much like her parents, she kept a bit of distance from her peers. Everything in Greendale seemed to be perfect on the surface, but on the night of September 14th, everything changed. Chapter 2: The Crime. It was a cool, crisp night when the peace of Greendale was shattered. Lucy Miller, who had gone out earlier in the evening to take some sunset photos, didn't come home. Her parents initially thought she had lost track of time, but as the hours ticked by, their concern grew. By midnight, James and Lily were frantic. They called Lucy's friends, but no one had seen her. The police were alerted, and a search began. The town came together in the search effort. Volunteers scoured the woods, fields, and every corner of Greendale. Hours turned into days, and hope began to dwindle. Then, on the third day, a discovery was made that would forever change the town. Lucy's body was found in a shallow grave near the edge of the forest, not far from where she loved to take photos. She had been brutally murdered. The coroner's report would later reveal that Lucy had suffered a violent death. She had been strangled, and there were signs of a struggle. But the most chilling detail was the cold, calculating way her body had been hidden. Whoever had done this knew the woods well and had taken care to cover their tracks. Greendale was in shock. How could something so horrific happen in their peaceful town? Who could have done this? The questions were endless, and the answers were elusive. The police launched a full investigation, and the hunt for Lucy's killer began. Chapter 3: The Investigation. Detective Marcus Thompson, a seasoned investigator with over 20 years of experience, was assigned to the case. He was a no-nonsense type of guy, known for his sharp mind and relentless pursuit of justice. As he walked through the woods where Lucy's body had been found, he felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. Something about this case felt different, darker. Thompson started by interviewing Lucy's parents. James and Lily were devastated. They described Lucy as a sweet, intelligent girl with no enemies. They couldn't imagine who would want to hurt her. Thompson listened carefully, but something about James's demeanor caught his attention. He was calm, almost too calm, while Lily was inconsolable. It was a small detail, but Thompson made a mental note. Next, Thompson turned his attention to Lucy's friends and acquaintances. Everyone spoke highly of her, but one name kept coming up: Ethan Parker. Ethan was Lucy's classmate, a quiet boy who mostly kept to himself. He was known to have a bit of a temper, and some kids in school found him intimidating. Ethan had a reputation for being a loner, and some even said he had a crush on Lucy. When Thompson interviewed Ethan, he found the boy nervous and evasive. Ethan denied any involvement, claiming he had been home alone the night Lucy went missing. But his alibi was weak, and his behavior was suspicious. Ethan's parents vouched for him, but their story had holes. Thompson felt he was onto something. However, as the investigation progressed, the evidence against Ethan didn't add up. There were no fingerprints, no DNA, and no witnesses placing him at the scene. Thompson was back to square one. He began to suspect that the answer might lie closer to home. Chapter 4. The unraveling. As weeks turned into months, the pressure mounted. The town was on edge. Parents kept their children close, and every stranger was viewed with suspicion. Thompson continued to dig into the lives of the Millers, searching for anything that might explain what had happened to Lucy. One evening, while going through old case files, Thompson came across something that made his heart race. It was a police report from 10 years ago involving James Miller. Back in the city, James had been a suspect in the disappearance of a young woman who had never been found. The case had gone cold, and James had moved away shortly afterward. Could it be a coincidence, or was there something more sinister at play? Thompson knew he had to tread carefully. He began looking deeper into James's past, uncovering a pattern of strange and troubling behavior. There were reports of James being involved in altercations, a restraining order filed by a former colleague, and rumors of an explosive temper. The more Thompson learned, the more he was convinced that James Miller was hiding something. Thompson decided to confront James directly. He arrived at the Miller house one evening, finding James in his study. The conversation started cordially, but as Thompson pressed harder, James became defensive. His calm facade began to crack, and for the first time, Thompson saw the anger lurking beneath the surface. In a tense exchange, Thompson accused James of being involved in Lucy's murder. James denied it vehemently, but there was something in his eyes, a flicker of fear, or perhaps guilt. Thompson left the house that night with more questions than answers, but he was certain of one thing: James Miller was not the grieving father he pretended to be. Chapter 5. The breakthrough. It was a cold, rainy night when Thompson got the call that would break the case wide open. A local farmer had found a camera in the woods near where Lucy's body had been discovered. It was Lucy's camera. The memory card was intact, and on it were dozens of photos Lucy had taken in the days leading up to her death. Among the photos were shots of the woods, the sunset, and a few candid pictures of her friends. But one photo stood out. It was taken just hours before she disappeared. It showed Lucy smiling, unaware of the figure lurking in the background. Thompson zoomed in on the image, and his heart pounded. It was James Miller. Thompson now had the proof he needed, but he knew he had to act fast. He obtained a warrant to search the Miller house, and what he found confirmed his worst fears. In James's study, hidden in a locked drawer, were Lucy's belongings, a bracelet, her notebook, and disturbing notes James had written about his daughter. The most chilling discovery was a journal James had kept. In it, he detailed his obsession with control and his frustration with Lucy's independence. He wrote about how Lucy was slipping away from him, how she no longer listened, and how he needed to teach her a lesson. The entries grew darker, more erratic, leading up to the night of her murder. James Miller was arrested that same night. The town of Greendale watched in stunned silence as the man they had thought of as a quiet, unassuming father was led away in handcuffs. The trial was swift, and the evidence was overwhelming. James Miller was found guilty of the murder of his daughter Lucy and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Chapter 6. The aftermath. Greendale would never be the same. The brutal crime had left a scar that would not easily heal. The townspeople struggled to make sense of how something so horrific could have happened in their community. They grieved for Lucy, a young life taken too soon, and they wrestled with the betrayal of a father who had committed the unthinkable. Detective Thompson, who had spent months piecing together the puzzle of Lucy's murder, was hailed as a hero. But for him, there was no sense of victory. He had seen the darkness that could exist even in the most seemingly perfect places, and it was a lesson he would carry with him forever. The Miller house was eventually sold,